was a middle-aged Midwesterner who was living it up in the suburbs with her husband and doggos. She ran a pretty successful dog training business from the comfort of her own backyard, and was by all accounts a very average and happy housewife. So when Amy found out that the FBI had intercepted a hit taken out on her own life via the dark web, she was absolutely stunned. She couldn't believe someone had paid thousands of dollars so a hitman would take her out. And on top of that, she didn't even know what the dark web was. In May of 2016, everyone at the police station in Cottage Grove, Minnesota were surprised when a special agent from the FBI paid them a visit. The agent told them that they'd received a threat against one of their residents via the dark web and asked if an officer would escort him to the local victim's house. A police officer was assigned, and off they went to the home of one Amy Allwine. A thin, blonde man answered the door when the detectives knocked, and he explained that he was Amy's husband, Stephen Allwine, and said that his wife wasn't home. The officers told him that they didn't think Amy was in immediate danger, but they needed to speak to her, like now, and could she please meet them down at the station? Thank you very much, bye-bye. So the next day, Stephen and Amy headed down to the station to speak with the police, and the story that the police unfolded for them was absolutely unbelievable. The dark web, accessible via some shady search engine that you have to download, is often called the Wild West of the internet. There you can find all sorts of illegal goods and services, such as people selling weapons, people selling illicit substances, people selling people, and people selling services to take out other people. And that's where Amy Allwine came in. Besa Mafia was one of the most popular websites on the dark web that promised to match hitmen to potential buyers, and was launched in December of 2015. By 2016, it was the most profitable hitman for hire website. When a customer posted a job, Besa Mafia would hold the money and find a local seller for the job, paying them once the customer expressed satisfaction. Besa Mafia also didn't try to convince its customers that it used these sleek undercover hitmen like you saw in the movies. They were honest with who they were paying for. Mostly gangsters and addicts. On April 25th, 2016, the Besa Mafia website was hacked, and every single name, address, and photograph of a person who'd ever been targeted had been breached from their database. Some of the names had Bitcoin addresses attached to them, which meant that the people who had posted the request were serious enough that they'd pay a huge amount of money to make it happen. And there, in the data, was a case titled Target Amy Allwine. The file gave her physical description and specifically asked that the hit be carried out while she was staying at a hotel near the Moline Airport in Illinois. It said she'd be driving a dark green Toyota Sienna, and there was even a photograph attached of Amy smiling with her family on vacation in Hawaii. The Bitcoin showed that nearly $13,000 had been paid to ensure the job would happen, and the person who ordered the hit's username read Dog Day God. In February of 2016, Dog Day God contacted Besa Mafia saying they were interested in a hit and asked for advice on what the best way to convert cash to Bitcoin anonymously was. Dog Day God also wrote that the target would be going to Moline in March and asked how much Bitcoin it would cost to make it look like she was in an accident. Several emails were exchanged between Besa Mafia and the buyer. The lowest price they could offer was $5,000, which they said would buy them a hit from a gang member in a turtleneck with a pistol, and that staging an accident would cost an extra $4K. The two eventually decided a fair price would be $6,000 for a gang member to wait at a location and ram Amy with a stolen car. Dog Day God gave Besa Mafia a bunch of details about the trip Amy would be taking for a dog training event in Moline on March 19th, 2016, and the date was set. On March 20th, Dog Day God asked Besa Mafia if the deed had been done. They replied, not yet, and told them that the hitman had followed her but wasn't able to do the hit. Besa Mafia suggested they use a sniper and explained there'd be no way anyone would suspect Dog Day God and that it would seem like a freak accident. Dog Day God responded that whatever they thought was best and that they were certain they wouldn't be a suspect. And Besa's like, okay, And with a sniper, you get a 100% success rate, but it's gonna cost you another $6,000. Dog Day God didn't have the money, and the hitman never found the perfect moment to carry out the hit. So then Besa and Dog Day came up with a new plan. Stage a home robbery. Besa asked if Dog Day was a husband or family member and told them they'd have to be out of the house if so. And Dog Day assured them they weren't and didn't live in Amy's town. Dog Day said they weren't sure if the Allwines had anything worth stealing, but they knew Amy would be home that coming Thursday between 9 and noon and gave her address. Dog Day suggested that the hitman burn down the house so no one could tell if anything had been stolen and to dispose of any evidence, and the hitman agreed. But he said it would cost an extra 10 Bitcoin. The next day, Dog Day emailed back and was like, okay, I got more info on her schedule, and gave more details about when she'd be home the rest of the week. And also said the wife also drove the Sienna, so if the Sienna was in the driveway, Amy was most likely home. The date came and went, and Amy still remained alive. Besa explained to Dog Day that the hitman had issues getting to the house, and asked if they could do it another time. Dog Day was like, yes, whatever it takes, I just want it done. I have to pretend to be her friend to get this information, and it's driving me crazy to be nice to her. They also said they were afraid that if they tried to dig for details too many more times, they'd be found out. Another date came and went, and once again, there was another reason why the hit couldn't be carried out. This time, the email explained that the hitman had been driving in a stolen car with expired plates and was taken in for questioning. Dog Day exploded at them and told them that they didn't care anymore what happened, that they just needed this woman gone because she'd slept with her husband and ruined her life. Okay, so finally, we've got at least the gender of Dog Day God. Up until this point, the user hadn't revealed anything about themselves that could help investigators get an idea of who this person was. But now, she was about to give these doggies a bone. She claimed that Amy Allwine had slept with her husband, which caused her husband to leave her, and now Amy was stealing all her clients, and pretending to be friends with her was absolutely destroying her. Then she gave them an ultimatum. It didn't matter when or how, just tell her the time and day, carry out the hit, and she'll pay them. If they didn't finish the job by May 1st, she wanted all of her money back. Capiche? Stephen and Amy Allwine sat in the police station in total disbelief. In front of the couple sat over 100 printed out emails with intimate details about her and failed attempts to assassinate her. But there was one thing the couple couldn't wrap their heads around. Who on earth would want Amy gone? As far as she was aware, Amy didn't have any enemies. She said she'd never even had a disagreement with anyone. Being mean just wasn't Amy's thing. She explained she was a simple woman who only cared about 3 things in life: her family, her church, and her dogs. Amy was also born into a family that were members of this extremely conservative church called the Universal Church of God. They're one of those churches that don't even celebrate Halloween or Christmas, because they're pagan holidays and whatnot. The point being that Amy and Stephen earnestly insisted that not being faithful to each other was a huge sin, and they took their faithfulness to each other and God very seriously. The two were even ordained as deacon and deaconess in the United Church of God a few years back. Stephen had actually risen to the ranks of elder in the church, so a rumor like this could threaten his career, and not to mention destroy his reputation. Amy's other passion besides her faith was obviously her canine companions. She was an active member of the dog training and competition scene, and her German Shepherds frequently won thanks to Amy's excellent training skills. This had led Amy to a blossoming and successful career in dog training, and her clients, humans and dogs alike, all loved her. She was just a really nice and lovely gal to be around. Amy couldn't understand how someone would hate her that much and want to do this to her, but confirmed that this person did indeed know intimate details about her life and personal schedule. The FBI had first told Amy that she wasn't in any immediate danger, and that's because she wasn't. When the data breach had occurred, it turned out that Besa Mafia was a total con site, that's entire purpose was to scam people out of their money. Dog Day God had completely fallen for it, and the authorities had the 147 emails to prove it. They'd made plans to take out Amy Allwine on nearly a dozen different days, but had never followed through. By May 20th, Dog Day God gave up and demanded a refund. But by that point, it was oopsie daisy, like in Upside Down, baby, because those databases were breached. She said she gave up on them and asked how much it would cost to hire an actual professional because she was willing to do whatever it took. Besa Mafia told Dog Day that the site had been hacked and that if they didn't give them another 10 bitcoins, their emails would be given to the police. And a week later, the FBI would make their little trip to Cottage Grove. Amy was understandably freaked. Just because Besa was a scam, it still didn't erase the fact that someone hated Amy enough that they had poured thousands of dollars into trying to snuff her. The investigators gave the Allwines the difficult task of handing over a list of names with every possible person in their life who could potentially want Amy gone. Amy was devastated and felt like she was betraying her friends because she knew it was none of them and that they couldn't possibly wish harm on her, but she did what had to be done. They handed over 3 of her closest friends' names who fit some of the details, aside from the fact that she knew none of them were having marital problems. Investigators believed the motive had to be that their suspect wanted Amy's dog business, and so they zeroed in on a friend of Amy's who was a dog trainer herself. Steven was ruled out as a suspect because he didn't know anything about the business of dog training and wasn't interested in dogs, so that felt like a safe bet to them. But interviews with all of the women led nowhere, so investigators asked Amy to give them a list of every person who knew her well, especially in the dog training world. She provided a list of nearly 100 names, and after first narrowing down who could have such intimate access to Amy's personal details, they exhaustively questioned their suspects. If there was one thing the authorities learned for certain, it's that every single person insisted Amy didn't have an enemy in the world. The detectives were stumped. With seemingly no direct threat to Amy's life for the foreseeable future, the special agent gave Amy his card and told him to call him anytime, and advised they set up extra home security. Steven went all out setting up cameras and alarms around the house, but then he took it one step further. Despite the fact that he already owned 3 various types of firearms in the house, he applied for a permit to purchase a 9mm for their personal protection. They kept the weapon in a case underneath the side of Amy's bed, and the key was hidden in a cupboard near the bathtub. This poor couple was clearly petrified. She confided in her sister that she was absolutely crushed that someone seriously thought that the world would be better off without her, but she still tried to maintain her positive and bubbly persona throughout it all. But in July, Amy received an email that made the special agent jump into his car and speed to her house that night. She'd gotten a message from an unknown sender named Jane. It read, "Amy, I still blame you for my life falling apart. I don't know how someone like you got to my husband, but because of you, he left, and my life has become shit." It detailed that she knew the police knew about her, and she saw that she'd put up a new security system. She also said she'd heard police had been snooping through her previous emails. She threatened the lives of Amy's husband, son, and parents, and said she would slowly take everything she loved if she did not meet Jane's one final demand: to take her own life. The authorities urged Amy not to take her own life, and she promised them that she had no plans of going anywhere. Besides, taking your own life was a sin in the eyes of God and the church. It was a preposterous thought for her to do such a thing. Amy took a religious trip with her family to Germany in October for a church event, and her family remarked that she was the happiest she'd been in a while. Being so far from Cottage Grove and the person who wanted her gone, Amy finally had enough room to relax and breathe for a bit. The family returned home, and for a few weeks, it seemed as though Amy's stalker was a distant memory. But on the afternoon of November 13th, 2016, the unthinkable happened. A group of clients had been gathered in the barn on Amy's property for a dog training lesson at Active Dog Sports. Amy sometimes allowed independent trainers to rent her barn online so they could use it for their private clients. The 5 students were startled by a loud screeching noise that sounded like someone was leaving the property in a hurry. They exchanged some looks like that was weird, but no one thought enough of it to go out and check. The class ended around 6 that evening, and Stephen and Amy's young son arrived home a little after 7. As Stephen was taking off his shoes in the front room, his son asked him a haunting question. "Why is mommy lying on the floor?" Stephen called 911 and through tears explained that it appeared his wife had taken her own life with one of the firearms in the home. When the police showed up to the scene, some of them broke down in tears. A lot of them had gotten to know Amy recently, especially because she took a Citizens Police Academy course and had done a ride-along with them. She'd done the course as her own sort of way of paying it forward to the officers who had kept her safe for so long. Everyone had loved Amy so much and couldn't believe she'd want to do this. But the detective sergeant thought the scene looked suspicious. Amy seemed to have been in the middle of making dinner when she randomly decided to off herself. On top of that, there was a film on the floor under her body, almost as if she'd been lying there for a really long time. The investigators immediately suspected foul play, and within a matter of months, the truth would come out. Dog Day God had really been Stephen Allwine the entire time. Yep, after hundreds of emails exchanged with a Hitman scam site, Stephen decided to become the hitman himself and pull the trigger. But why? Stephen had been living a double life. He explained that divorce was a sin in the church, so obviously his marital troubles could not be fixed by just separating from his wife. Something awfully tragic would have to happen in order for Stephen to be able to be with another woman. Apparently, Stephen's position in the church often led to him counseling other couples through their marriage troubles. If anyone's the expert on troubled marriages, it's Stephen. And through counseling young men, he had heard about the website Ashley Madison. Ashley Madison was a specific website catered to married men who were looking for a little something on the side. Stephen had been hearing so much about this site, he figured he should give it a go himself. Stephen had affairs with 2 different women on the site. Realizing he'd never truly be happy with his wife Amy, he decided something needed to happen to get her out of the way. That's when Stephen decided to venture into the dark web. Once Besa Mafia turned out to be a bust, Stephen was so impatient he took matters into his own hands. And remember all those security cameras and alarms Stephen had to put up for their would-be intruder? Turns out the only good they did was helping catch the fact that Stephen Allwine was the only person caught on camera entering and exiting the property once they proved that there was no gunpowder residue on either of Amy's hands, meaning she definitely didn't pull the trigger herself. On top of that, the 9mm had been placed next to Amy's left arm. Amy was right-handed. Well, Stephen was found guilty of taking Amy's life and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And that is the stranger-than-fiction story of how religious guilt and piety can turn a man into a monster.